hear another person dinging in online?
Yep.
Excellent.
Aku.
Welcome, Aku. All right, so first order of business as usual is the roll call. So commissioners online, please unmute yourselves if you're muted. Commissioner and all commissioners, just say here or present or whatnot when I call your name if you're here. So Chair Commissioner White, I am here. Commissioner Priscilla Boateng.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Kristen Conkle.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Marlon McCormick.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Mary Ellen Metzger. I do not see Commissioner Metzger present. Commissioner Quarshie.
Here.
Excellent, thank you. And Commissioner Walkowinski. And I do not see Commissioner Walkowinski at the moment.
She's not available.
Okay. All right. Well, we do have a quorum. So thank you everyone who is present, both commissioners and commissioners, staff, and members of the public. Next item on the agenda is the land acknowledgement. The Sustainability Commission humbly acknowledges the ancestral homelands of this area's indigenous nations and original stewards. These lands, still inhabited by native descendants, border mountains sacred to indigenous peoples. We honor them, their legacies, their traditions, and their continued contributions. We celebrate their past, present, and future generations who will forever know this place as home. Next order of business is public comment. At this time, any member of the public may address the Commission on any subject within the Commission's jurisdiction that is not scheduled before the Commission on that day. Due to open meeting laws, the Commission cannot discuss or act on items presented during this portion of the agenda. To address the Commission on an item that is on the agenda, please speak on that item during that time. Otherwise, please use the Teams chat function, or if you're in person, just raise your hand and let me know. Do we have any public comment at this time? Jenny, go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Chair White. Hi, members of the Commission. Jenny Neiman, Climate Action Section Director. I figured I would take this moment. We found out on Tuesday that the city of Flagstaff was awarded a $1 million EPA grant for resilience hubs. And we are really thrilled. We have not done resilience hubs in the city of Flagstaff in a kind of a traditional way, though we have so many examples of resilience in this community. And so this grant will help us build on that. We will have 3 pilot resilience hubs in partnerships with Sunnyside Community Association, Southside Community Organization, and CATS of Flagstaff for a mobile resilience hub, which we think might be first of its kind. So we are thrilled. We really see this as a game changer. We see organizations, we have kind of a list of official partners, but we really see folks across the spectrum of our work being involved in this, and we want to see the resilience hubs grow from 3 to many, many more. So much more soon on this. It has been a little bit of a whirlwind in just the 48 hours since we learned of this award. So deep gratitude to many, many staff and community partners. And yeah, that's us.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Congratulations, and yeah.
Big deal.
Yeah, congratulations and thank you. Is there any other, also first public comment I've ever seen in the. So thank you. All right, any other public comment? All right, moving on then. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the September minutes. Is there any comment on September's on the minutes from the September's meeting? All right, seeing none, I motion that do we have a motion to approve the September meeting minutes?
I'll motion to approve.
So we have a motion to approve from Commissioner Conkle. Do we have a second?
Second.
Excellent. We have a motion to second from Commissioner Boateng. Is there any, so the motion on the table is to approve the September minutes. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll bring it to a vote. All in favor of approving the September meeting minutes, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. All opposed, please say no. All right, the motion passes unanimously. And as always, thank you to all of our note takers for, I think it's just you right now, right? So thank you for, so thank you for keeping such excellent and diligent notes.
You're welcome. This is my last one though.
Well, in that case, I think it's, sorry, this is embarrassing. Remind me of your full name?
Brianna.
Brianna. I'd like to officially thank Brianna for her excellent work in note-taking for, how long has it been? Like at least a couple years now, right?
Oh, just like about just a year, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Time flies, I guess. Well,
Not to go off agenda, but we're not losing Bree, and we'll give.
I just won't be the minute taker anymore.
True. So we'll fill everyone in at updates at the end of the meeting.
okay, cool. Well, again, Brianna, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so next item on the agenda is the land availability and sustainability study and code analysis project has a brief presentation for us.
Michelle McNulty will be sharing her screen.
All right, thank you very much. Welcome, Michelle. Looking forward to hearing what you have to say, and the floor is yours.
Okay, first I'd just like to introduce myself. I'm Michelle McNulty. I'm the planning director. And I wanted to be there in person. I think most of you heard I'm at the Aquaplex, so I do apologize for that, but excited to be here nonetheless. And I want to just double check you can see the screen.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Perfect. So this is an update on the last CAP project, otherwise known as the Land Availability and Suitability Study and Code Analysis Project. I'm giving the presentation today, but this is a very large teamwork. Tiffany Antol, the zoning code manager, who's also online, and Genevieve Pearthree are part of the project management team, as well as Jen Michelson from the housing section. And just bear with me while I figure out how to switch slides. Okay. So this is a multi-pronged initiative to address critical long-term planning and resiliency needs. As I mentioned, the project management team, it's because this is a financial partnership between planning, housing, sustainability, and Mountain Line. It's very highly coordinated between a lot of other divisions and sections throughout the city, including engineering, including development engineering and transportation, fire, building safety, economic vitality, water services. It says Mountain Line, it should say Metro Plan, and others as needed. And the most exciting thing about this project is that it's really providing the space to have a much needed high level conversation between all the different divisions and sections about how we're moving forward as a community. So there's really three objectives of the project. I'm going to go over them in high level, but then the next few slides will get more into the details. But really what we're trying to figure out is what is the land that we have available and what is the development potential and what are the barriers. It's also an in-depth development code. When I say development code, that means zoning, building code, fire, engineering standards, etc., and process analyses through the lens of the City Council's commitments to both sustainability and to housing. What's really important about this is that we have really good things in our codes and we don't want to throw that out. So it's really to look at what is working so that we don't lose those things and that we can leverage them. But then we really need to understand what is not working and why. The most important thing about all of this is that we're testing the theory against approved projects so that we can understand is what we're seeing in that theoretical world as we apply it on the ground. truthing it so that we're really getting everything calibrated as we make recommendations moving forward. As I mentioned, there's a lot of different divisions and sections involved with this. So coordination and public outreach is probably the most important thing that's really part of this project. The project management team meets at least once a week. I think the last 3 months we've been meeting upwards of 2 to 3 times just to get all of the information together to really kick the work off. There is public outreach, but it's a little bit different than how we typically do it, especially in planning. It is more focused with developers and the design community, as well as a few other interested groups. We do want to keep our advisory committees advised, so housing, transportation, sustainabilities, and others as we find it appropriate. And then obviously, because we are talking about zoning code and just codes in general, Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council. So as I mentioned, it's the land availability and suitability, as we call the LAS, and then the code and process analysis, or really code and analysis process, that we call the CAP part of the project. So why are we doing a land availability and suitability study? We don't have much land left in Flagstaff, and we have a lot of community needs. We have housing needs and we have economic development needs that includes the need for commercial and industrial zone lands, as well as protecting our open spaces and making sure we have enough land for housing. It's also really important that we look at what our land challenges are so that we can right size the code amendments that will follow. So really the scope overview is identifying various parcels that have redevelopment or new development, so infill or greenfield development potential, and trying to identify about 50 opportunity sites that we can really focus in on being through that lens of housing, but also supporting sustainability goals. There's a suitability analysis that's going to include the site, evaluation of those site constraints. But we really need to understand the infrastructure gap analysis because that is driving up the cost of a lot of our development. And looking at regional cost reduction strategies, and the deliverable on that will be a vacant residential land report. The second part is the code and process analysis. And we are literally evaluating every code that touches a development project. And not just codes, but some of our manuals, for instance, the traffic impact analysis manual, as well as the incentive policy for affordable housing, and then other codes and standards, policies, et cetera, that get identified through this process. The immediate processes that we know we need to analyze are our development review, and that's our interdivision staff or IDS review. So what this is these underneath there, you'll see we have planning reviews for concept plans, site plans, conditional use, and zoning map amendments. Those all come through IDS, which is a makeup of all the different divisions and sections that have codes. We get together as staff to talk through the different site challenges. Are the codes being met? And then get those comments back to our applicants so that they can move forward to the next stage of their development application process. And again, this is a pretty complex project that's going to be fluid. So as other processes are identified as being needed to be looked at, we'll look at those as well. So my long-winded way of saying this is not an exhaustive list. So what's been happening in the last 3 months, so this was approved, the contract with the consultant, it's a Dow is the leading firm with Cascadia Planning. The contract with that consultant team was approved in July before council went on break. Since that time, we have been meeting, like I said, at least 2 to 3 times a week, doing a lot of data collection, compiling all the GIS data needs, development codes and processes, and then building a policy matrix. As well, we've established internal city staff technical advisory committees for both scopes of the project. We've met with them, this group, to kind of go over the criteria and how to provide input on identified properties for that land analysis. And then continuing to meet with that group to further refine available sites and to prioritize opportunity sites for residential development. The consultant team has also had independent meetings with developer and construction cost interviews. So members of our development and construction community, as well as key firms that really understand construction cost and funding in Flagstaff. And we're not just meeting with market rate developers, but also our affordable housing side. So Habitat for Humanity, Housing Solutions of the North are both represented in those groups. We continue to do code and process analysis, and then providing updates to both the Housing and Sustainability Commissions, specifically, one, because this is through the lens of our housing and climate emergencies. So we want to make sure that we are giving you guys appropriate and time appropriate updates. And then on November 14th, we will be meeting with City Council at the work session. The consultant team will be here. They're going to do some kind of site visits and legwork on the ground, but then also be here to present to council on the findings so far, get feedback on those opportunity sites, and talk about next steps. Here's an overview of the schedule. I know it seems like a long time out that we're looking to finish this up at the end of 2024, but given the complexity and the amount of work that we're doing, this is actually a very aggressive time frame, but 100% manageable because of this being such a commitment by so many of our parties. And so I won't go through this in detail, but happy to go back to this slide later. And then kind of and then what? So we do this analysis and this code and process review. A lot of this information will inform the regional plan. It's also important to note that the regional plan update process is also informing our work. We're working very collaboratively together. This will help us prioritize a work program for the code changes that need to be made. I do want to preface this with that doesn't mean we're not making code changes in the interim. Tiffany Antal has already been presenting. She has 4 code amendments going to City Council in the next couple of months. So as we identify kind of smaller changes that have been big impact, but don't need to rely on the data that we're collecting, we're taking those code amendments through. Once we start actually writing the code language, we will conduct very thorough community outreach on those changes, and that will be much more robust than just the focus groups that we have been working with. And then we will continue to vet and modify the processes as recommended. And that is it. And then this is the time for you all to ask any questions that you have of me.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the commission or from others present?
I have a question for Genevieve since she's here. What are some of the things you're bringing up in these meetings from a sustainability perspective at this point?
Yeah, so it's fairly preliminary. We're working right now on identifying specific goals and policies in the regional plan, the carbon neutrality plan, other adopted policy documents that are in the scope of the project. So the code analysis part is really just getting started, so we don't have a lot to add there other than kind of creating that foundation. The land availability and suitability analysis, that's also ongoing, and as Michelle mentioned, the consultants are going to be here in November to do a site visit. So I guess the answer is not a ton yet, but we're really just trying to get the project starting. But yeah, that's half of the main part of the scope of the project. So definitely, I'm excited to see what it produces. Cool. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Any other questions?
I have a question. I might need some help with the question. A couple months ago, we had a presentation from somebody that was talking about the public's perception of what land can be used in Flagstaff, and it was like this game, right? That they like did a bunch of workshops and people played a game.
The regional.
The regional plan. The regional, okay. I'm like, I don't remember who it was and what the plan was. How does this kind of coincide with the work that's being done there?
So that was Sarah Dector. She's the comprehensive planning manager. And I'm sorry if anybody else was going to answer that, but comprehensive planning is under planning and development services, which I'm the overall director of. So and the reason why I say that is because it really allows us to have a lot of coordination. And so what she was doing was scenario planning, so this is kind of a different way of getting to it's a different way of kind of getting to the same answer. Sorry, I'm trying to say this in a way that makes sense. But basically, we're like reverse engineering it and kind of looking at the same thing she is. Okay, wetlands. So that we know what the community's goals and values are. And that's part of the exercise that she's doing with the public. So we can see where's the commonalities. There's these different scenarios that are being kind of identified or brought forward. But there's similarities. Like, for instance, we know that the community doesn't want us to expand like in a sprawl-like way that gets into our open spaces and into the forest. So in some ways that helps us get the community values. And then this other exercise is looking at what lands do we have left? What are the barriers? And how do we right size codes so that we can protect the community's values from the implementation of these plans? Does that kind of help?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks.
Perfect.
All right, so Commissioner Metzger has arrived.
I'm so sorry I was late.
No, it happens, no
Traffic.
worries, but we have a question.
And I apologize if this is a question that is, might have been answered earlier in the presentation, or if it is something out of ignorance. Is there a location that we could go to, or a member of the community could go to and see what lands are available for development in the Flagstaff area? That they could just go and say, oh, there's a place there, and there's a place there, and there's a place there. Where is there a generic map that shows where development might occur, given that there might be changes in zoning or whatever that might be?
So that question hasn't really been asked or covered, and I might ask Tiffany to chime in if I've missed anything, but I mean, all lands can be developed. So part of what we're doing is identifying the land, the greenfield development that would be kind of the next choice, as long as infrastructure can get there. And then we're looking at lands that are underutilized or underdeveloped that are kind of ripe for infill or redevelopment. And so you could go on the city's website and find, a lot of the ownership, like what's the zoning district, who owns it. We also have a development status report, so you can go to the community development's webpage and see what kind of applications are being submitted. But the thing that we're producing is, I think, maybe more to what you're asking about, which is this more kind of map that IDs what's kind of ripe for redevelopment and where
Yes.
we would likely see higher density housing.
Yes.
Yes. So I think the short answer then is not yet, but that's what we're working on.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Good.
All right.
Tiffany or Genevieve, would you add anything to that?
No, agreed. That's what we're doing.
Perfect. Thanks.
Point of this whole project, to develop that map.
All right, I guess Tia has another question.
This is all ownership types? Sorry if I missed that.
Yeah, no, I didn't say, and that's a great question. Thank you for asking. It is. It's both privately held lands as well as city-owned properties. We're looking at, and not just what is under control of housing. Definitely we want to look at where their holdings are and seeing, does it make sense? Maybe there's some land trade opportunities because some of their holdings don't make sense for like the type of housing they're trying to bring online. The other thing that we're looking at is where we have large projects like the downtown mile, and we know there's going to be remnant parcels or parcels that aren't intact and on their own might not be viable for development, but maybe there's a few remnant parcels adjacent that could be replatted and combined. We're also looking at those opportunities.
Thank you. All right, thanks. Are there any other quick questions? All right, well, Doesn't look like there's any. Michelle and everyone else, and everyone else from this project, thank you for joining us for this. And hope to, our commission will continue to be involved with this for the next year. It's important work. Thank you.
Sounds good. And we'll work with Genevieve and team to figure out when are appropriate updates to keep coming back to you. So thank you for having us this evening.
All right. Next up is the discussion of electric vehicle charging infrastructure and possible fees associated with that. And so we have Jenny Neiman, who is our Climate Action Director, and Danae Pressler, I believe, is here as well. Jenny, Danae, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair White. Hi, Commissioners. Jenny Neiman, Climate Action Section Director. I haven't been here in person in a while, and I'm just really glad to be back. So thanks for having us. So we mostly today is going to talk about our EV charging fee infrastructure EV charging infrastructure fee. And what I want to just kind of talk about is this is a really exciting step for the city to have gotten to. We have been installing EV charging stations for the last 3 years due to a partnership. This is Owen. To a partnership with APS. And so we are now kind of at a natural evolution, a step forward to say, okay, how do we think about these for the long term? How do we think about electricity use and how we think about kind of supporting electric vehicles in our community, but also think about the subsidy involved there. So Danae's really got the expertise. Okay. Danae's really got the expertise and the data, and is really going to take this away. So thanks a ton, Danae.
Absolutely, pleasure to be here, Chair, Commissioners. My name is Danae Pressler. I'm the climate analyst. And if you worked with Ramon Altore, DC, I've stepped into his shoes. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that I can provide a presentation. And we're off. So what we'll cover today will be just an overview of where we're at with our charging stations, where they've been installed. And then I'll provide an update on some statistics that we've gathered and propose some draft fees just for us to talk through and to gather some feedback today. And then a quick snapshot at what our next steps will be. So first up, an overview of our charging stations. We have 25 different locations where you can charge an electric vehicle, or I should say spaces to charge an electric vehicle. And the ones that are probably most interest to this group are the ones that are available to the public. And so those are the ones that are highlighted here in orange. We have these at City Hall, the 4 of them right in the parking lot, as well as 4 at the Visitor Center, 4 at the Aquaplex, and 6 over at the airport. In addition to that, we have some that are for fleet and or employees only. And so we do have stations at Core Services, the Public Works Yard, the Rio de Flag plant, and our East Side shop, which is where a lot of our water services folks operate out of, as well as 4 charging ports at the police station. And that was done in partnership with the county. So then, this is kind of fun to look at. This is just pulling up the data from this last fiscal year, July 1 to June 30th, and looking at our public charging stations. Because one of the great things with the type of chargers that the city has is we have really robust data that we can see. These are basically, they're called network charger, but they're connected to the internet. And so we're able to actually see the usage in real time. And so if you look at the table here, the City Hall at the top, the number of sessions is 3,000 sessions over that one fiscal year. And this is meaning a session is sometime when somebody puts that plug into their car. And so we're seeing
really great use, particularly at City Hall, the most popular stations, but also good use at the Aquaplex and Visitor Center. And then if you look to the next column, we have how long people are usually hanging out at these charging stations. And City Hall has, people will typically be there for about 2 hours. And then Aquaplex and Visitor Center are slightly less, with about an hour and a quarter or an hour and a half that people are staying there. And so I will note that the airport here, you'll see lower number of sessions and more variability in the data. And that's partly because we don't have a full year of data on these charging stations. They've been installed more recently. And so we'll continue to monitor this, and I expect those numbers to go up. And then the nature of the use at the airport is just very different than at our other sites downtown. But what I really want to draw your attention to is this last chunk. So one of the things that I've been evaluating is how much of the time is a vehicle plugged in but not actually charging. And across our stations, on average, people are plugged in, or a vehicle is plugged in and not charging 22% of the time. And so for me, that's kind of a trigger to say, oh, we have some etiquette that we might need to correct, because if we have people that are essentially blocking the space once their vehicle is charged, it's not making that room available for another user. And this is particularly with the current fee structure. We don't charge anything to use the charging stations. And so there's not really any incentive to move your vehicle except for, out of the goodness of your heart. But we are starting to see a little bit of abuse, and people are able to comment on through the ChargePoint app. And I've seen some of that coming up of like, would love to charge, can't because it's being blocked by cars that are already charged. So that's one of our,
Can I ask, sorry, can I interrupt with a question? For people that I don't know that much about electric vehicles, how would somebody know that the car is just blocking in, not charging, versus that it's actively charging?
you can see it on the station. It's got this
Okay.
little screen, and it'll tell you if the vehicle is charging
Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
yeah. So there's public shaming for sure.
Yeah, is that, at the airport, is that because they're like plugging it in and then flying away?
That is what we've had. So that's not the intended use for those stations, but we've had that happen where somebody, is taking advantage of charging while they're on a trip, but then it's blocked for a really long time.
Are those behind the new parking system now, or?
No, they're not in the fee parking area.
So so they're parking there and they're gonna get to park for free, and they're also using a space. We need to have some etiquette on that one for sure.
Bingo.
And some of those spaces are ADA spaces.
Mhm.
They're not always ADA
Mhm.
plates.
That's correct. Just got the inside scoop.
Yeah.
So some other kind of interesting data that we can glean from the stations is where our customers that are using these stations are coming from. And as our commissioner members have already pointed out, there's a large chunk actually coming from out of state. And so this surprised me because this is new. I haven't seen data like this that has such a high percentage of out of state. But it makes sense. Flagstaff is really attractive for visitors coming.
Route 66, they're
Yeah.
going from California to New Mexico.
Absolutely. And so it really, like our tourism folks are really interested to see that they're taking advantage of charging. And this is one of the reasons that public charging is so important, because if you're coming from elsewhere, you don't have the ability to charge at your home or, convenient location. You're relying on.
So the stations that you pointed to,
Mhm.
they're the ones that have been, APS has done with the city. Now, are there hotels that have them too, and they're not on that list? So a person driving through, staying at the Marriott can be plugging in and it has nothing, you don't get that data?
Yes,
Okay.
that is 100% accurate. And there are other charging stations in the city. I have been tracking that as well, but we don't have access to their data. But I will, oops, let's see, wrong way. Here we go. But this was also interesting to me too, that we have a roughly even split between Flagstaff residents and other Arizona residents that are using our charging stations.
that are available to the public. And then of importance to this group especially is that we are seeing significant greenhouse gas emissions savings. And so the 48.9 metric tons was just in one fiscal year, and that would be the equivalent of taking 5,500 gallons of gasoline essentially off the road.
Quick question about that. It's not a huge deal, but if somebody has a summer has a summer residence in Flagstaff, is like here for 2 months out of the year, on that, does that count them as Flagstaff residents or other Arizona residents?
Fair question. This data is coming from the zip code that the users entered when they created their app. Basically, in order to use these charging stations, you download an app on your phone. And so once they created their account, whatever zip code they entered, that's what's being tracked.
Okay. Thank you.
And this metric tons, that's reflecting only again, back to the ones that you're monitoring.
Mhm.
So there could be a lot more out there.
Mhm.
And are you monitoring the ones at the police station, et cetera, too, or is it just the ones that are the city ones?
I wish we could. So the challenge with those other stations, I'll go back here real quick, these ones that are not,
Fleets?
yes, and actually we're okay. Core Services is the same type of charger, it's just not open to the public, but we have data here. But on the other 3 sites, they're not that smart charger, and so there's no easy way for us to get the data. But we do try, like the police station has a separate utility, it's metered separately, and so we can get some data that way.
I'm just thinking that that particular number regarding metric tons is only a portion of what we're saving, so let's put more of these up everywhere. This is just
Yeah,
great.
it is awesome.
That's
It's
great.
really awesome. And so digging down now into the energy use that we're seeing, again, we're looking at the ones that are available to the public. You'll recall that City Hall was the most popular station, and so you'll see that reflected in the energy use, about 45,000 kilowatt hours over that fiscal year. And then this breaks down to about just shy of $11,000 in electricity costs. And then follow that over and you get to this 24 cents per kilowatt hour. This feels really nitty gritty, but it'll be kind of helpful to bear in mind that the reason that we're looking at what is this average cost for, in this case, electricity, will play into how we think about what fee is appropriate.
So, and another question, I apologize for being so inquisitive. Do we have solar panels that are feeding into these APS numbers at all by any chance? I mean, do we have, the City Hall got solar panel? We do, we open them over the parking lot, right?
We do have them over the parking lot. These are separately metered, but electricity is funny because the electrons tend to just go where the nearest need is. So it's not a direct relation, like we can't say that these are 100% solar, but the proximity of our solar system to those charging stations makes it cleaner when, particularly during the sunshine hours. Yeah, no, great questions. Keep them coming.
If I could ask one quick question, would I be correct in assuming that the higher cost per kilowatt hour for the airport is due to the amount of time that cars are left plugged in, but they're already charged there?
Good question. It's not quite the way that works out. The higher cost there is because if, just like anybody's electricity bill, you have those monthly kind of service fees or environmental fees that are kind of standard on there. And so we have those standard fees on each bill, but the airport isn't having as much usage in the kilowatt hours, and so it's lending itself to a higher per kilowatt hour fee.
That makes sense, thank you.
Okay, I was like, I don't know if I explained that very well.
You
No,
did, thanks.
Okay. There's also some variation in what the charge, how much electricity costs from different times of year and different times of day. And so there's a little flexibility.
Is there any sense of equivalency regarding the cost of the kilowatt relative to a gallon of gas, for example?
Yes.
So, okay, we're going there.
Yeah. We can go there.
Well, I
We
mean,
can
I would
absolutely
assume that when you're talking about the fees, that somewhere in there will be the amelioration fact that you're not having to buy gas, so this fee is gonna have that particular connection.
Yeah, I don't have it in here, but I do have that
Okay.
in here, so I can share it. But just kind of a summary here is recognizing that currently the city is expending about $16,000 in electricity to be able to provide this service, and that is equivalent to 23 cents per kilowatt hour. So then we're talking about costs here, or expenses for providing us the service. So we've talked about electricity, that's the close to 16,000. The other fees that come with having these charging stations is there's a subscription fee. It's actually a lot like your cell phone. It relies on cellular data, and so the city is charged a subscription fee. And then there's also maintenance for the stations over time. So on average, a typical year would be about $25,000 with the number of stations that we have now. So then this, and I apologize, there's so many tables in this presentation. It is like
A lot of data.
It is like
It's
torture.
good, it's interesting, I like it.
All right, so hang with me on this one. We're gonna go through this column by column. And so, and we're gonna be looking for some feedback on this, but the idea is to think about different ways that fees can be implemented. And we wanna think about what's appropriate for different types of users as well. So right now, we're gonna look at the status quo. Our fee structure is that it's currently free to use. Remember that we were seeing a typical session for an hour and a half, and so I've got a row here that says how much would that cost. Obviously, this one is free. Here's our annual expenses, and then here's where we would potentially see revenue, and then lastly, how it pencils out, broad strokes. So we're spending about $25,000 under status quo. If we move over to the scenario that we're calling incentivize, we have flexibility to be able to set a fee that varies over time. And so we could do some level or some amount of recharging. In this scenario, it's free for the first hour, and then that 23 cents a kilowatt. That means you're paying for the electricity. So if a typical user is going to spend less than $1 to charge, the city is going to spend just as much as we are across all the scenarios, but we do get some revenue from this one. So we're getting back basically the cost of that electricity, that in this case $15,000. So that subsidy is around $10,000 per year. The next scenario would be a cost recovery, and so this accounts for all those other expenses, the subscription and the maintenance. And this would put us at about 37 cents per kilowatt hour. The typical customer cost would be in the range of $3.33 if they're there for an hour and a half. And this one, we're just trying to break even. It's a wash. The next one here is an attempt at encouraging behavior. And so we could have a fee that is covering the electricity and the subscription. That's in this case what the 31 cents is, until that vehicle is charged. And then once you're charged, now we're going to put in basically a parking fee. You're blocking that station, and it's going to cost you $2 an hour to sit there. So that's another model. It would cost, if somebody's only there for an hour and a half and they're charging the whole time, they're going to come out ahead, $2.79. But what we see based on the typical, the data that we have, if that trend continues, we're actually generating revenue, about $9,000, because people do tend to sit there. So this would be collecting on
Do
it.
they just plug their car in and go shopping or something? Is that kind of what's going on?
Yeah.
They're not like sitting there staring at the wall waiting for the thing.
Yeah, no, like sometimes you will see people napping in their cars while it's charging, but they're not going to hang out there after it's charged. Like they're ready to get going. Yeah.
We do, we have heard, part of this was we've talked with all the staff that work where these stations are, so whether that's the airport or the Aquaplex or the visitor center, and they see it, right? And so we've heard like, oh yeah, they plugged in and then went and got on the bus. Or they plugged in and maybe they went to work downtown, right? So again, everyone responds to pricing, so,
Something that's free.
without
why not?
pricing, you don't, yeah, exactly, so.
So just a point of clarification.
Yeah,
That $2 an hour, that starts when they're fully charged, or that starts immediately?
no, once they're charged,
Okay, that's what I,
yeah, or once the vehicle is charged up.
thank you.
But you know, there might be reverse effect too. I know this is probably for discussion later on, but the person that's plugging it in and then going shopping, if they worry about having to come back, then they might just say, well, I'm not gonna bother charging here, I'll just,
Absolutely.
charge at home, or
Yeah.
there are like 4 stations at Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
Go to Walmart and charge there. Do we know what they charge at Walmart for them? Oh, cool. Find that out soon, I'm sure.
It is, and if I may share my personal experience, I shared this, I think, with Danae. I was in the Phoenix area. I have an electric vehicle, and I got notification my car was ready, that I'd hit my charge limit, and I had to race back. I knew, because it's $1 a minute.
Wow.
Isn't that wild?
Wow.
Crazy.
It was at Carolyn
Was that like at
Commons,
Macy's
I'll
or
just
something like
say.
that?
Yeah, I mean, it was at a bougie mall.
Yeah.
But, and then that's the type, but you respond immediately.
Oh,
Like, I
nice.
knew exactly, I was watching my phone and because the car, well, not all cars, some cars tell you it's going to take X amount of time to get to your charge
You can
limit. So I
balance
set a
it,
timer
yeah.
and I hit my timer and I hauled to go unplug. So it's an effective motivator.
Cool.
And the other thing with the type of station that we have, it will notify the user when their car is nearing full charge. And it'll also notify you when there's gonna be a different fee kicking in. And so it's not like they'll be surprised.
Now, are these kilowatt prices are relatively equivalent to something you could do at home? So that somebody says, oh, well, it's just as cheap to charge at home, or is it cheaper to charge downtown?
It's cheaper to charge at home
Okay,
than what,
but they're stuck, they want to charge, I understand that, okay.
yep, then these models would be more expensive than charging at home.
And then what's the grace period on when the $2 an hour starts? Like, how fast do they have to get out of there?
We can set it. Yeah, we can
That's
set
what this
that grace
discussion
period,
is all
yeah.
about.
Otherwise, I feel like if it's, you have 60 seconds to unplug
Right.
your car,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I don't think
Everyone's
we
gonna
wanna
get
do
charged
that.
the $2.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, so it would make sense to have that grace period for that kind of reason, not to penalize people that are trying to leave.
While we're at it, have you, along similar lines, have you considered increasing fees for, so under column D, have you considered increasing fees as people stay there longer? So maybe like 50 cents for the first half hour, and then $1 for the next hour, and then $2 for the next hour, and so forth?
Yeah, we have talked about it, and I will say, there are a million ways to do this, right? And we, today, maybe we'll get into next steps, because I think that will be helpful for you all to see where we're going here. One of the next steps I didn't include, though, is actually that we can adjust, right, on a year-to-year basis, right? Like, we don't want to, as we learn more, right? So all of our data right now is based on things being free, right? And so we can start charging in a really simple fee structure, and then see if we need to get complex, see if we need to charge more or less, et cetera. So there are a million options, and we are really open to kind of being flexible as we go, while also kind of maintaining consistency. So yeah, I know you all have a lot on your agenda today, so I just.
But this is so interesting.
I know.
I can't stop. Okay, but I'll move on.
Gracie's will be very.
Yes. And the other example here is that we could, instead of doing a kilowatt hour fee, we could do an hourly fee from the start.
Mhm.
Any who does this, it's $1.50 per hour on top of their parking fees. And so this one actually looks like it's cheaper, but it's not accounting for the additional cost of paying for parking. And if we applied it to the data that we had, the city would just be spending about
They
$3,000.
lose money on it.
Mhm.
And have you discussed, and you probably is the next screen, and I don't know this, but the notion of perhaps people with zip codes that are the Flagstaff area paying a different amount than somebody who's from Las Vegas or something like that.
We haven't
Since it's-
considered that.
Since it's our community and they're our machines, and blah, 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 whatever.
Yeah. I actually don't know if we have that ability to charge different for different zip code. What we can do is for different user groups, and so I don't know if I have.
Because it would be nice to encourage people in Flagstaff to get electric cars.
Yeah, we do want to do that.
I think the challenge is that this will always be more expensive than at-home charging.
Okay,
And so that's the
Okay.
balance. It's just a
okay,
balance.
well, that's
you know?
true. If you're in Flagstaff, you can go home. That's true. I
Exactly,
thought about
yeah.
that. You're gonna get more money out of the Phoenicians that can't go home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it does get a little bit
Of
complicated.
course, I can always put a sign out in front of my house. Charge here, only $1 an hour.
There you go.
Competitor.
Better than the city's rate.
There you go. That's an idea, see?
Is
See,
there
something like
a,
that.
is there a sense as to like, to what extent or whether the revenue model here would encourage the city to maintain or expand the electric vehicles charging program?
So certainly, the one that has revenue is more sustainable from an economic perspective, being able to actually expand the program.
Which is what we'd like to see happen.
And so these other ones, we're maintaining what we have, but it doesn't, we would still be asking separate funding for adding stations.
Thank you. Okay, so we do need to move on.
Yeah, let's go to
And
the
I
next
know I'm
steps.
guilty to have asked questions, but let's move on to the.
And
Thanks.
here we go. So this is where we are today. We're seeking recommendations first from the Sustainability Commission. We're also going to be talking to some other boards and commissions. And then we are going to be finalizing a staff recommendation with your feedback included to bring to the budget team, and then also to the city council for really just a policy discussion, not bringing forward at this time a proposal, but just to get some policy direction, which we've got slated for November 14th. And then lots of implementation and planning to happen after
How
that.
exciting.
So is there a vote that you need from us, or is there any other feedback that you need, or?
The only other feedback I would ask is if thinking about these scenarios, there's a couple different user groups, and we may want to have different fees assigned for different user groups. So we've got the public, which we've talked a lot about. We also have our own city fleet vehicles, and we've got our city employees. So I don't need to put you on the spot right now, but if you have ideas of what makes sense or what you would recommend for those different user groups, be happy to.
I will take a screenshot of this and email your email and this to the whole group tomorrow morning, and they can provide additional feedback. Does that work okay?
Oh, yes.
And you don't have to wait.
And just as a reminder, yeah, individual emails, no group emails.
Yeah, you can just blind copy, that way.
That's what I've been doing
Okay.
since you suggested.
Oh, perfect. And with that, just thank you for your time
Thank you
and
for
your
what you're
interest. It was actually, you guys were more interested than I thought. Great. Yeah.
Well, we are the sustainability.
I mean, it only makes sense. But now you set the bar high. I'm gonna go to these other commissions and they're gonna be snoring.
Thank you all, and we'll be in touch, right? We are gonna go to council, right, and have the general policy discussion. And then we'll get into implementation and really down to business. So we just appreciate, your feedback, your general feedback and all of it.
All right, well, thank you very much. And that, again, just as much, I am certainly complicit in this. We are now slightly behind schedule, but only very slightly. So let's move on. So next up is the Resilience Neighborhoods Network.
Let's wait, save 20 minutes on that.
And we have our Climate Vulnerability and Resilience Vista, Gracie Reckhammer here. So Gracie, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. I'm gonna share my screen real quick.
Where are you gonna go? Oh, I do? Yeah.
I don't wanna go home right now.
I love that little shark foot. Isn't that the cutest little?
So. Oh, okay. Sounds good. All right, can everyone online see my screen there?
Oh, online.
All right, well, hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm Gracie Reckermer. I'm the Climate Vulnerability and Resiliency Vista in my second term with the Sustainability Office here. And I'm going to be discussing two different projects. If you see it on your agenda as two different items, I'll be why, but it's in one presentation for you. And these are both new projects we're working on in the Sustainability Office, the Resilient Neighborhoods Network and the Flagstaff Equity Atlas. So first I'm going to introduce the Resilient Neighborhoods Network project to y'all, and I'm going to be requesting your feedback at the end on how we can best serve the needs of the community through this program. So to start off, this is a program that we've been wanting to start for a long time, but we haven't had the capacity yet. And my Vista position was actually created to provide capacity to develop this program, so very excited to be here. The Resilient Neighborhoods Network, or RNN, is meant to be a community-led initiative to build resilience on the neighborhood level through social connections and different resilience-focused projects and events hosted in neighborhoods. And some of the goals of this program are increasing community awareness about climate change impacts and how they impact Flagstaff neighborhoods, helping neighborhoods actually prepare for these impacts. So we're talking about the short-term climate impacts like wildfires and flooding, and also longer-term impacts like increasing temperatures, and then strengthening relationships and social connections, both within neighborhoods and across different neighborhoods in our communities. And then finally, just in general, encouraging the community to flourish and improve their quality of life, even in the face of difficult challenges that we are seeing. So I want to mention again, right now RNN is primarily an idea. So a previous Vista actually worked on creating some materials and developing the framework for this program. So we have a resilience guidebook for neighborhoods, we have outreach plans, neighborhood assessments, but this was all happening during COVID. So there hasn't been a lot of actually on the ground work that has happened yet. So kind of at this stage of the process, we're needing to build capacity in neighborhoods and start actually beginning the implementation process. And before I go on to that, I want to talk a little bit about the history. So this program is built on the model of Lakewood, Colorado, who has a sustainable neighborhoods program. And this program has been up and running for about 10 years now, and it's just been incredibly successful. So many neighborhoods throughout the city of Lakewood are involved in the program, and they're known as participating neighborhoods. And so they've completed lots of different resilience building activities like urban agriculture, air quality improvements, community outreach plans, lots of different things. And the program is resident led. So neighborhood leaders lead these different projects and just focus on making community members actually active participants in resilience building in their own neighborhoods. This program also operates using a certification system. So you can kind of see on the left side there, neighborhoods host different projects, workshops, events, and they're able to actually earn credits. And if they earn enough, they are known as a sustainable neighborhood. And so overall, the focus of this program is both environmental and social strength. And I'm going to highlight that a couple times, that social interconnectedness is just a key factor in building community resilience. And that's going to be a big takeaway for us as we're working on developing this program. So bringing us to the capacity building, we have this idea for a pilot program called Flagstaff Resilience Leaders, which would focus on building capacity by training up strong community leaders. So to meet the need in our neighborhood for strong community leaders, we're proposing a leadership building program that would train neighborhood leaders building resilience-related skills, and then also support through staff time and hopefully funding. So this idea would include a 3-month program with bi-weekly workshops focused on building neighborhood capacity. And this would really depend on the needs of individuals and neighborhoods that are involved. So these workshops could focus on planning neighborhood projects, developing outreach plans, learning best skills for communicating about resilience, identifying different community resources and partners that can be involved, and anything else. And so some of the goals of this program, mainly to increase the capacity of neighborhood leaders to work on building community resilience by developing knowledge and sharing resources, identifying the needs of different neighborhoods and developing projects to meet these needs. So ideally, we'll, in the workshops, actually be able to work with neighborhood leaders on planning and developing these projects and potentially support them through funding. And that could be something related to the neighborhood sustainability grants that TIA administers or other avenues as well. And finally, just working on building these relationships and partnerships among leaders and Flagstaff. As I said, these social networks are just extremely crucial for building resilience and would help us to better support Flagstaff neighborhoods in the long run. So some outcomes. Overall, this leadership program would really help us to actually form the foundations of RNN. As I kind of showed you the Lakewood model, those established neighborhood groups and projects. This would kind of form the foundations for that by building neighborhood capacity, building relationships, and actually building projects. So on the capacity side, again, I mentioned strong neighborhood leaders and how important they are in developing resilient neighborhoods. So these leaders will come out of the program with greater communication skills and ability to organize people and projects, resilience knowledge, conversations. And then, so since the workshops will be so relationship focused and we'll have leaders from different areas of Flagstaff, it'll allow connections to be built across Flagstaff. And then the program will also create space for people to actually be able to start going out in their own neighborhoods and building these networks and having these conversations. And then finally, the really core of RNN, as we saw in the Lakewood model, is the projects. So identifying neighborhood needs and actually developing strategic solutions and projects to meet those needs is at the heart of this program. And so not only will the workshops, will we be able to actually work together collaboratively to build these projects and plan them, but we will also ideally be able to support them with funding in the future so that they'll be sustainable. And then some next steps. Again, this program is currently in the idea stage, so these next steps are really where I could use some of your input. But throughout the next months, we'll be working on developing workshops that will really effectively meet the needs of Flagstaff leaders where they are. And then identifying and recruiting the leaders, which is a big part, and figuring out ways to compensate leaders for their time and support the projects once the workshops are done. And I know Jenny mentioned that we were just funded for that EPA grant to develop resilience hubs, which is super exciting. And obviously this project and resilience hubs are very, very closely connected. So hopefully we'll be able to, I know it's just a brand, we just found out about this, but hopefully there'll be conversations to figure out how to make those two projects connect a little bit. So I'd like to open the floor for questions now, and then I have a few just kind of guiding questions here on the slide, and I would appreciate some feedback.
Yes. This is really great. I think some of the language around community leaders could be a little off-putting to folks that maybe don't think of themselves as currently a leader. And so it's intimidating to be like, I want to be a neighborhood leader. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, you're like calling all neighborhood leaders. You might discourage people from going to those workshops if they don't identify as a leader themselves, even if they have the capacity or the drive to do some of these resilience projects. So I don't really know if I have a solution to it, but I think framing it as like we want to recruit the current leaders and like train them, but the people that are current leaders might already have this kind of knowledge, and maybe focusing on trying to gain those people that are like on the cusp of like, I want to learn more about how to help my neighborhood, but I don't really know how.
Yeah, thank you, absolutely.
One of the components of a leader is they're always too busy. So you're okay with going to people who are already showing this leadership. So that I would suggest that you think in terms of things like the master gardeners people who are already involved in things that have to do with the earth and have to do with their own neighborhoods, and utilize them as avenues to get the word out and see who could pull in for that. I would think that would make them, they're already participating, that's what I'm trying to say to you. So what you want to do is go where they're participating, pull people in from that. When you were talking about it, there's a gentleman in my neighborhood who's a master gardener. He tried to raise bees this last year and they froze. He was just so crushed. But he would be a great neighborhood leader. He's been involved in a lot of our little neighborhood events, and I'm thinking, he's the one, but he's a master gardener. So that was what I was thinking when you were talking about that. There are people out there who are already participating in a lot of these things and would be good go-to people. And then that's just the beginning of spreading the word too. They might say, not me, but I've got a friend. So that's the other option.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I would appreciate any and all like contact information directing me towards people that you think would be.
I know his mother.
Thank you. Commissioner McCormick, go ahead.
Okay, hi Gracie. This is super neat. I'm curious, like, what are the project, and sorry if you mentioned this and I missed it, but what are the projects that you're hoping these neighborhood leaders or members of this program enact?
Be driven by the neighborhood itself.
Yeah,
Whoever's in
that's
the neighborhood.
a great question, and yeah, you're absolutely right. It's really dependent on the neighborhood's needs. And so as I mentioned at the previous Vista, I created some materials. We do have like neighborhood guides and ideas for starting, like conducting neighborhood resilience assessments and having like resilience work groups within the neighborhood. So there definitely are like foundations to build off of. But also like when we were talking about master gardeners or things that are already going on in neighborhoods, it can be existing projects too. And we can look at the Lakewood model. They've done, like I mentioned, kind of like lots of urban agriculture, so community gardens, backyard goat keeping, just like tons of different stuff. And I don't think it needs to be limited necessarily. I think like a good place to start is conducting those neighborhood resilience assessments and kind of identifying where there are needs in the neighborhood and then just building projects that meet those needs.
Just offer, if I may, add a couple of additional examples from other communities that have been working in this space. Resilient neighborhood networks can also activate during times of emergencies. And so that may look like, we know that we have individuals in our neighborhood that may not be able to shovel their driveway, or it is King County, Washington had at least, pretty sure they still have it, but a really fantastic program where individuals had emergency response cards that they put in their front window that said, I'm okay, or need help. So it's also an opportunity for activation during times of crisis.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. And there's a ton of really cool examples out there that I couldn't get all into right now, but one other one that I just thought of is like having like a shared tool library. So for example, I mean, you can go as far as sharing cars and sharing vehicles among neighborhood members, but for example, not every person in the neighborhood needs to have a lawnmower or a vacuum cleaner.
Or a snowblower.
A snowblower, yeah, like sharing tools, sharing resources.
Okay, thanks. Sounds neat.
It feels like a precursor to the neighborhood sustainability grant. Like step 1, do this. Step 2, apply for the funding.
Yes.
Right?
It can definitely work together that way. That was what we've already kind of talked about. Part of the workshop, like realistically, could be kind of helping, like if people have projects, like helping them figure out how to apply for the neighborhood sustainability grants and just supporting them.
And the other way, the people who apply for the grants, wouldn't it be great for you to encourage your neighborhood in what you're doing and get other people participating, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, and that might be something the commission wants to explore as well as a complementary opportunity to test out the RNN. Obviously not this grant round, but in the future too, if there's an opportunity to help multiply and accelerate.
Do you have a handle right now on, like, at least for starters, like how many of these community how many of these community leaders you're hoping to enroll, and how many people, I don't want to say, I don't want to say that they're responsible for, but like, how many people are you sort of hoping that they would be engaging with each?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I would love any input towards. Just like off the top of my head, I would feel like if we were having like one cohort of people going through these workshops, maybe like between 10 and 20 would be a good number for a pilot round, but I'm also open to suggestions. And as for how many people they're engaging with in their own neighborhoods, I mean, as many as possible, right? But we could have like, oh, between this workshop and this workshop, go talk to 10 people in your neighborhood and have a conversation with them about resilience. It could really depend on, you know, what their goals are and what kind of projects they're working on too.
Something that might be an advantage is, I mentioned this earlier about maps. You can take a map of the city and define where the different neighborhoods are. It's like Fox Glen, for example, you probably know that they have this massive Saturday garage sale thing, like once or twice, you know, during the summertime. They're already a community that gets together and organizes. That's what I was just suggesting, that there might be some community groups that you can kind of like draw the line around. That would be a target group. Let's go see if there's someone there that could do that.
Yeah, definitely.
There are definitely like defined Flagstaff neighborhoods.
Yeah.
But I think it'd be nice to have a more flexible definition of neighborhood for this, rather than like have to, like the whole community of Sunnyside, right? Versus like, if these 4 or 5 blocks identify as a neighborhood because they already have relationships with one another, it might be nice to have the opportunity for more intimate projects too.
Well, that was what I meant, is
Yeah.
that Fox Glen, they're already a group that does a lot of intimate interactions.
Yeah.
And it's, since you're starting with, this is just the starting stage. Once it gets going, it becomes something that's really prominent in the community. Then you're gonna have other neighborhoods that are gonna say, oh yeah, we wanna do that. That looks good to us too. So, but you have to have that starting point. Where do you start? So.
That's a big kind of part of the Lakewood model, is once they're a sustainable neighborhood, they get a sign in their neighborhood that says that they're a sustainable neighborhood or an outstanding sustainable neighborhood. So it's, yeah, encourages other people to get involved too.
I also think it would be nice, not like to partner with NAU, but to not forget about like student neighborhoods in terms of identifying student leaders and getting them, like NAU sure has stuff for students to do, but to bridge the connection between the city and the university in terms of projects like resilience building, I think would be really great.
Absolutely.
And native population too.
It looks like Commissioner Quarshie has a hand up online, if I'm seeing that right.
Sure.
Am I miss?
Someone named Alex.
Oh, Alex, I'm sorry, apparently I need new glasses. Okay, Alex, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I would just like to suggest the East Phillips Neighborhood Institute as another model that's worth looking at. That's a neighborhood in southern Minneapolis, and they've been really effective in doing some really powerful grassroots community organizing, specifically pushing towards a like sustainable urban farm in an area that has been like historically insanely polluted. So I would recommend looking at East Phillips Neighborhood Institute.
Thank you.
All right, well, yeah, thanks very much. I think we're just about out of time for this agenda item. Does anybody have anything pressing that they want to say before we move on?
Sorry, I have one more comment. I think also in starting up a program like this, it would be nice to recognize that there are currently already resilient neighborhoods in Flagstaff and like maybe reach out to them and highlight them so that they don't feel like there's kind of this target of nobody's doing anything good. Not that people necessarily interpret it like that, but
All the work that's been done by the people with the sandbags, et cetera, and all
Yeah.
that effort that they put out, that'd be great to be able to go in and give them a big pat on the back.
That's a good idea. Yeah, thank you.
All right, well, next up is a presentation about Flagstaff, the Flagstaff Equity Atlas Project. And Gracie, if you could Well, first, Gracie, it's you again, and.
Again.
No, that's a good thing, not a bad thing, but, yeah, we are running a little bit short on time. So, this, you've been doing great so far, but, just in the interest of us getting through everything we need to get to, if you could keep, maybe, I have you scheduled for about 20 minutes, if we could try to maybe keep it to 15 or so.
Sure.
That'd be great. But yeah, Gracie, thank you again, and go ahead.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'll just move right on to Flagstaff Equity Atlas Project. Again, this is a new project as well, and this project was initiated due to our need to incorporate data into our decision-making processes, specifically equity-related data. So as a city, we cannot advance equity without the information to support our decisions. And an equity atlas would be a tool that uses data to examine how outcomes and opportunities differ by demographic or geographic groups. It is also a visual mapping platform that can show the relationships between different determinants of health and well-being, climate resilience, related to geography. And I'm going to show you a more visual example of that in the next slide. So I know that sounds a little bit vague right now. But the goals of a tool like this would be to really allow decision makers to analyze how well different neighborhoods and populations can access key resources and opportunities, and to have a process that ensures that we make data-driven decisions. And then the final goal, this could also be used by community members to access equity-related data in Flagstaff and just to better understand and visualize the inequities that exist. So currently we're collaborating with an NAU graduate program, and they're conducting some background research on how an equity atlas could be used in Flagstaff. And so after the class is done in December, we're going to have kind of more concrete results, and we're going to be able to take those results and develop a plan moving forward. So maybe more information after that. But first, I'll offer a little bit of background on what an equity atlas is. So multiple equity atlases already do exist, including a national equity atlas, the screenshot on the left, and then multiple individual cities. So the National Equity Atlas includes lots of detailed information on racial and economic equity in the United States, and it really focuses on equipping leaders with the data they need to advance racial equity and shared prosperity. So put simply, an equity atlas is a snapshot of information. It can include, as you see up here, racial equity, communities, climate, the natural environment, economy, transportation, and more. So it includes data on indicators related to these categories, and also includes describing what this data means for people's outcomes in life. And so as you can see here, equity atlases often use these visual maps to demonstrate data, which can work a lot better for communicating data than just looking at the raw data. So we're incorporating this into our strategy as well, and we're working with some GIS students to develop preliminary maps like these for Flagstaff and to include them in the city's GIS portal, so they'll be available to community members as well. And an equity atlas has multiple uses, but the primary one is to inform decisions with data to improve equitable outcomes. So this can involve collecting and analyzing relevant data, forming processes to incorporate data into our decision making, and just in general, understanding how equity outcomes are impacted by these different indicators. So this here is one example of how data can be presented in an equity atlas. It's a graph of neighborhood poverty in the United States by race. So just for an example, this information could help decision makers to understand just a piece of how race may be related to poverty on the neighborhood level. And they can use this information to allocate resources accordingly and make more informed decisions.
There's that red one.
And so as I mentioned, we are working this fall with an NAU Climate Science and Solutions graduate class to support the project. So there's about 25 different students working on different aspects of this project based on their different skills and interests. So first, part of the class is working on some background research to inform the development of an equity atlas in Flagstaff. So they're researching and analyzing case studies of other cities who are already using equity tools in their decision-making processes, and also just working on reporting some of these best practices for the context of Flagstaff. And then other students are working on actually creating some of the building blocks that would eventually be used to support this atlas. So, for example, identifying social and geographic data that already exists in Flagstaff and collecting and analyzing it with an equity lens. And then using this data to create this equity profile, which is a report that analyzes different equity indicators with Flagstaff-specific data. So this profile and the associated data will be really crucial in supporting the data foundations of an equity atlas, because obviously it's a data-focused tool. It needs a lot of data. And then finally, one group of students is using data that already exists to start actually creating these preliminary GIS maps, these story maps that can demonstrate equity indicators across Flagstaff. And the maps will really be the best visual example coming out of this project of what an equity atlas would actually look like and how it could be used across the community. So they might be using, variables such as race, and then floodplain proximity, and then layering these two maps across different neighborhoods in Flagstaff to see how different variables interact with each other to impact outcomes. And we can use this as a city to better serve our neighborhoods and just make better decisions in general. So for the next steps, again, it's a little bit not concrete right now just because this class is currently going on, but they're going to conclude their semester by presenting to City Council on December 12th. And they're going to be giving kind of the results of their research and recommending action to, actually consider putting resources into developing and adopting an equity atlas and incorporating that into our decision-making processes, which would obviously be a long process to get there, but hopefully this is a good start. And then we're going to be working with the city's GIS team to upload these preliminary equity maps that they're creating into our GIS portal. So that kind of demonstrates that initial visualization of what an equity atlas could look like and how it could be used. And then we're going to be reviewing the research that they've completed and kind of taking those recommendations and using them to make a more concrete project plan going forward. And then finally, as the ultimate goal of this equity atlas is to serve the community, we recognize that community input is going to be absolutely essential in the next steps of this process. So we need to develop a concrete way to include the community in the development of the atlas. So once again, I'm going to open the floor to questions, and if you would like to use those as guiding questions, you can feel free as well.
I would like to see the tool used very cautiously.
Okay.
I lived in Tucson where we had schools that had to be structured relative to federal monies and federal lawsuits, etc. And you want to be careful not to be labeling. It's one thing to say, oh, this part of the community needs this kind of extra support. Maybe a bus route needs to go there because it doesn't go there now and people need to have a bus route. But to be cautious of designating areas in a community that might cause some harm. I guess that's the best way to say it. I would just encourage you to be very, very cautious. Labeling can be a very bad thing. It can also be, as I said, looking for a bus route, very good. But saying, oh, that's this community, this is what's going on in that community, crime rates, et cetera, before you know it, real estate prices start going down and people's lives start changing. And so when you ask how it should be used, I think it should be used very cautiously.
Thank you. Yeah. Maybe we want real estate prices to go down a little bit. You know.
You know what I'm talking about.
It was a joke.
Do we have any questions? I have a few questions or comments. Do we have any, I want to give other people a chance to talk first. Do we have any further questions or comments for Gracie on this? Equity maps for Flagstaff.
I have a question. You mentioned it will be used to make more informed decisions, but can you give an example? I mean, I like the bus route change example, but are there more examples that you have of how equity maps have been used?
Yeah. Genevieve, do you have anything?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think that one of the things, so I'm going to use actually an example from our flood proofing grants where we use data layers to target and understand the homes that are most vulnerable to flooding. And then we used income data and did some overlays. And so we created very targeted outreach to certain sectors of the community. We had to make the flood-proof grants available to the entire community, but we wanted to be very intentional about how information was distributed. Bree actually helped us get information out by tabling about the flood-proofing grants. So an idea for the Equity Atlas is for us to be able to really target outreach in terms of our programming and our services, but to help other sections, divisions within the city that have assistance programs like the fire department, water services, to actually help them get information distributed to targeted areas. There's a lot of focus also, I will say, with respect to your comment, because you're exactly right, there could be some unintentional misuse of data, as well as unintentional consequences of how that data is looked at. But one thing we are noting in every federal grant that I'm looking at right now, that the inclusion, the focus on equity, and the target of these grant applications on our most vulnerable community members. So for us to be able to say we actually know where the targeted communities are is also really important for us. Not just the grants, you know, those are, we got our first grant, big grant, but they're incredibly competitive. But we also need to use that data so we can conduct our outreach and help to design programs and policies around that as well. It all ties in though, right, with the RNN and the mapping, the results of the work that's going to be done with the regional plan. We want to try to pull all this together and use these data layers so we can really be intentional. Is that a really too much of an answer?
No,
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks very much, Nicole, and thanks very much, Commissioner Conkle. Any other questions or comments? All right, well, I do have, I guess, one question, for starters anyway. So there are certain communities that are, so in social sciences kind of well known as difficult to appropriately represent in data sets like these. Unhoused communities, undocumented communities of undocumented migrants, elderly communities that are elderly people who, you know, may not have access to the technology that may not have access to the technology that the surveys are being done with, or whatnot, for example. And I wonder if you just for a few seconds speak to how are you going to, or how these groups are going to try to make sure that these communities are adequately represented, are not underrepresented in the data.
How's the data going to be collected?
That's a very good question, and that's part of what the NAU students are conducting research on right now to give us some recommendations about, you know, what data we do have. They're doing deep dives into like what data do we have, and the answer is like a lot of it we don't, right? So some recommendations for how to collect that, the remaining data that we'll need. And I don't think I have a great answer for you right now about how the data is going to be collected, but I think that's a really important concern that will need to be considered in the planning process.
Okay.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's 5 groups working on this, and one of them is really focused on what data is available as well as identifying the gaps, both in terms of like the information we actually have as well as the geographic scale. So as Gracie mentioned, we're talking about building blocks right now, so it's really just figuring out what do we know and what do we not know. And so it's like that's kind of step 1, and so absolutely your concerns about some populations not being captured, I think the NAU students are their research is gonna show that. And also, just for example, Flagstaff is challenging because we're a small town, so our census tracts are really large and they capture a lot of different areas. And so we're also dealing with challenges about how the geographic scale that a lot of census data, for example, and other data is collected. So I think what we're hoping NAU students will help us with is just give us a picture of what's going on right now. And then we can go from there and figure out, okay, what do we do with this information? What are the gaps? And how could great attention and be full.
Thank you. Are there any, I mean, I guess you just mostly answered this, but are there any like sort of fail safes to sort of guard against groups, either among the ones that I mentioned or other ones that I, haven't thought of being underrepresented?
There
Can I
will,
answer that, or do you want to go?
there will need to be fail safes. Yeah, I would say like we're not in the stage of like data collection right now. Like we're not going and surveying people, so that hasn't even started yet. But there will need to be.
Okay.
And part of it too is looking at what are other cities doing and how have they accounted for that too. So hopefully they can identify some helpful practices that would be relevant to Flagstaff.
Okay, thank you. Will these surveys be just of Flagstaff city limits, or will they include the surrounding areas?
That's been something that's been talked about a lot. The NAU students are very interested in looking outside of city limits. I think, and I can't speak to them, I haven't read their final product yet, but I think the recommendation will be going beyond city limits, but.
Loop is pretty close to us, yeah.
Yeah, I can't say exactly like what, I don't know exactly how it'll end up.
Thank you. Is there, sorry, oh yeah, and are there strategies you have in place for dealing with sort of itinerant populations, college students, people with second homes here, again, homeless people, or unhoused people who might be transient populations and whatnot?
That's a good question. I would say there aren't strategies in place yet, and I think like identifying some of those like considerations is a really big part of like this process now, like why we're here talking to y'all and what this research is that the NAU students are doing right now is like we're not even at that stage of the process yet where we've even identified all of those considerations that we need.
I do recognize that this is very early in the
it's super early stages, but that's like the best thing about being here and what I'm really looking forward to getting out of this are some of those things that we can like make sure to have in our minds, and hopefully that the students, when they're like, as Genevieve mentioned, like researching best practices, will be able to give us some good methods and strategies for addressing those things.
That's my question too, how you do that equitably. And
Yeah.
of course, one of the things that fell down in the last census was that we weren't really sure how to collect a census anymore. There was a good time when people would go door to door, and that might be something that NAU kids could do, boots on the ground, go door to door.
Yeah, there are classes in NAU that do that work.
Okay, well, Gracie, thank you very much, and best wishes with this. And well, if y'all need any help with anything, you got my contact information. So I'm available on the off chance that you do. But I know that NAU has plenty of experts in this whose knowledge far outweighs my own.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, so I'm gonna.
Your cheerfulness and your optimism, your up-hat.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm gonna, again, we might have to punt on vice chair elections again, but,
I don't know.
I do, what is that?
I don't know if we do.
Oh,
Well,
yeah, somebody that wants to do it?
I mean, I just know we keep punting it.
Yeah, I do too, but, I honestly, I think the one person I know who might wanna do it is not here right now. So, but I also know we're running out of time, we have 20 minutes left, and we have two more 10-minute items on the agenda that I wanna, make sure to try to, get to. They might not take 10 minutes, but we'll see
Why don't
how
we
far
vote
we
for
get.
that person in absentia? It's called if you don't show up, you get to be vice chair.
It's tempting, but. All right, so I do wanna, let's, shuffle things around. We'll go next to the neighborhood sustainability grant check-in and reminders. So I think, Tia is the person on the spot for this, but I'm happy to chime in as needed as well. I think what we wanted to do this is just with sort of give everyone reminders about deadlines and check if anybody has any questions about process or anything else. So,
Yes, I don't think this will take 10 minutes. I just wanted to give an opportunity to remind everyone that the grant scores and questions, the first round of grant scores and questions are due to me on the end of the day next Wednesday. And I just wanted to see if there was any questions that came up. Well, I know, we're implementing a new scoring process and rubric, so I just wanted to check in and open it up and have the opportunity, because some of the questions, like, I can't always answer, and I've been bouncing them off some of the prior, like, longer standing commissioners for sure, so. Does anyone have any questions about the scoring process? Or what's next or anything?
Since I was one of the last joiners of the group and didn't have a lot of prep on the rubric, et cetera, ahead of time, let me say to you what I think I'm having to do, and if I'm wrong, kick me in the email, okay?
Okay.
So, I've already read through
And this is to everyone.
I've already read through all of the materials twice. I have the rubric and the application here, and I'm applying this to people's applications. This is what I'm judging by. And I'm putting it on a spreadsheet, the numbers that I put down for each of the little segments. And then I'm sending that spreadsheet to you. Now, when you mentioned comments, am I supposed to make other comments besides what goes into the rubrics? The numbers?
Would you like me to speak to that?
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, and so comments are optional but encouraged. Basically,
Where did they go in the spreadsheet?
do we overlook putting a place for them? I think we might have.
But I don't know. I mean,
Somebody have the spreadsheet in front of them?
it was revised from like what last year's was.
Because it's the spreadsheet, has my name,
I would just honestly,
Should've put the
in
numbers
the
in.
final column, make notes. That's
Yeah.
like a simple solution.
I think that's probably the best thing, and comments are optional, they're mostly.
Should we pull one up? Just
Oh.
in the spreadsheet, just to
That's
show
not a
that
bad
that
idea.
could be
Awesome,
helpful.
yeah, absolutely.
Because that's a good question.
Total money in the grant, it's 75,000.
Yes.
Yes.
So
But
we're
I'm
only
not
gonna be able
sure
to
that
provide
should
for 10 people.
We can
Everybody gets them.
We may be able to provide for more depending on depending on how many, depending on, whether all of the applicants are asking for 7,500. I have a feeling that many of them will not ask for the full funding, in which case we might be able to.
Help a couple people out. Or there might be that there's somebody that asked for 7,500 and you might say, and I'm saying you in terms of whoever finally does might say, well, you asked for 7,500, but really this is a $5,000 goal. So we're gonna give you 5,000.
Have we done that in the past?
We have.
Yeah.
Well, we've aligned.
It's unusual, but it's happened.
That's helpful.
Well, only the one time for the place that we used.
The chapel.
Yeah.
But that was after we awarded the money already.
Yeah.
Contingently awarded the
long-
money
but
if
long
they would-
ago, before.
Is this former ones? Is that what this is? What's this?
No, this
3,
is
informational. Okay, that's the one I'm already doing.
So
Okay.
if we were like on your, sorry,
No, yeah,
I'm doing
do
3.
that first part first.
So yeah, Commissioner Metzger, over here, if you just want to like say notes / comments, and that way they'll get to me.
Oh, I see. So it would come under cells NOPQ, all those cells right there.
Yep, that
Okay.
works great.
All right.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say it's optional to put comments in, but often it's useful both either for your own purposes when you look back later at stuff, or it's useful if you're in later discussions with commissioners to just like be able to look back and remember what your rationale for scoring something a certain way was.
Well, it is my this is what I do, is I do things with paper anyway. I printed off all the stuff in paper. I'll be writing it down, so I'll have that for later on if there's a discussion.
Oh, yeah, that's totally fine. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think we need I don't need your comments
Okay.
necessarily. We'll bring them in the meeting
Okay.
to do the discussion. However, I will be accepting any questions you have for applicants, like, that are key to clarifying and might change the scoring, the final
Oh, okay.
scoring. So those are the questions that are due also on Wednesday, with
Oh,
that first
okay.
round of scoring.
Okay. Questions to applicants? Okay.
Going back to that other question, and this, Commissioner Conklin, he was before your time, but when we had a lot less money for the grants, there were times where the commissioners would review budgets and be like, we don't think that $300 for stickers or flyers is an adequate
$500 for a
amount. We would
volunteer.
like to see it reduced to 50. I mean, I wouldn't recommend that we get into that level or the commissioners get that nitpicky, but there is opportunity to ask for refinements
Mhm.
in the budgets.
Okay.
If there's consensus, of course, amongst the commissioners that, hey, we think that, or
The
I did a
idea's
little
good.
research.
The idea's a good idea, but if you really want some money, this is kind of how much we probably could think for that, and so can you refine your budget?
I mean, it has to be very valid, but Tia, yes.
Well, I was just thinking if that would be a really helpful thing to like have by the end of the day Wednesday, if there's any really big things that pop out.
Glaring,
um,
glaring.
Yeah, because then by the final decision, we would know what their budget is and if we could
Yeah.
make it,
Yeah, that
pan
person
out.
wants $2,000 for their trip to Hawaii, they'll study the
Yeah,
coconuts.
we
before they
say,
put it in
there's
their
one
application.
increase that and
Or like
take
that,
us.
We do that. Yeah.
So yeah, if anyone sees any glaring questions or, if we want to ask them to revise a budget, but I guess I wouldn't encourage this, but if there's anything that we think would help them to, get the grant, then
Well,
try to submit that to me by Wednesday.
and most people, when they're writing a grant, if they say the limit is 7,500, they reach for the 7,500, but they might be very happy with 2,000 to take care of what they need.
I have been in the seminars, been trying to encourage people to not reach for the 7,500, to ask for the amount that they need and no more.
Yeah.
And that should be, and for what it's worth, in my opinion, that should be one of the criteria is is how efficient of a use are they proposing to make of the grant money? And so hopefully, like, if, in my opinion, like, if it seems that it's like, they could have done the project with 2,000, but they're asking for 7,500 anyway, then, that to me seems like, it's a very inefficient use of grant money, and their scores should reflect that.
In some of the grants I've read, I feel like there is a case of the cart before the horse in a way too.
Yeah.
So there are people who are saying, we want you to pay for us to study this, because we think it's really important, and maybe we'll do something with it. And I don't feel like there's a solid plan, and I wanna say.
Well, then, that should be, that is valid, and that should be reflected in your scores.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure because it felt like some of the message was, it's okay to do exploratory of an idea. So that's good that you're exploring the idea, but it seems to me like I would feel like, I feel like they should be paying for their own education.
Yeah, I mean,
You know what I mean by
we
that?
we have helped fund educational activities.
Oh, yeah, I don't
in
mean
the
that.
past.
I mean, they're
But,
saying, well, we're not sure this would be a really good idea. So we'd like about $500 so we can kind of look into it. And I want to say, look into it first and then ask for the $500. That's what
Yeah.
I mean by the horse before the cart.
Yeah, and that's one of those things, like, as a commissioner, that is, like, how worthwhile that appears to you.
Okay.
That's up to your discretion, and that should be
And
reflected
there's
in
two
your
other people
scores.
reading them too. They might go, we think it's great, and that's fine.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that you'll often, usually commissioner scores line up pretty well, but often you'll see very different scores between different commissioners on the same project, and stuff like that is a reason why, and in my opinion, that's fine.
Commissioner McCormick has a question,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Tia. Commissioner McCormick?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something on the budget because there were a couple instances where I thought people didn't give themselves any money for their time and their budgets were so small. So my question to them is, do you want to relook at that and maybe pay yourself for all this time? Because the last thing we want is for people to be burnt out. So there's kind of both things that happen when reviewing a budget. Like, are you asking for too much, but also maybe you're not asking for enough? And I just wanted to put that into the conversation.
I think that's fair.
So the other question I have is, I perceive that there are rounds of this. This is the first round.
This is the only round.
Oh, good, okay.
Do you mean
So, well, there'll be,
I got the impression we're gonna give this to you, and then we're gonna come back and redo stuff and do more. This is it, right? We
Yes.
redo this.
this is it. There's, multiple stages of scoring, but there's no it's not like a multi-round interview process.
Okay.
So we'll, in next month, we will, next month we'll have our scores. hopefully. And at that stage, we'll divvy it, we'll distribute,
Lots of clarity.
Tia, go ahead.
So the questions that you submit to me, I will send to the applicants and then they'll have a deadline to get those answers back. And so you can adjust your scores accordingly.
Okay.
So that's kind of the
Oh,
quote unquote second round, but it's a
Thank you.
different stage.
So yeah, Tia, thank you for clarifying that. I wish I'd said that.
No worries.
Cool. So, and again, Tia, also thank you for watching the computer monitor to make sure,
Oh, yeah.
to check when people have questions. It's very easy I know it's part of my job, but it's very, very easy to miss when somebody has their hand raised
Totally.
on that.
I will add one more thing, just because we're on this kind of agenda, NSG checking very broad. I've had some community members ask when the final presentations are going to be for last year's because they kind of need to plan far in advance. So is that typically during the January or February or is it a separate meeting?
We don't have to do it this way in the future. In the past, we've rolled those into Sustainability Commission meetings. They've typically been like 5 to 10 minute agenda items. I would say it'd probably be the easiest for us if we spread it out over like January through April or something. Now, one thing that does actually bring up, and this will probably be an agenda item for sometime next year, we may want to revisit for the current applicants and going forward, whether that's something we want to continue doing, because in the past, as Nicole just said, we had many fewer applicants and many fewer awardees. But given the much larger scope of the current grant and the potential number of awardees we might have, I think that I think everyone doing a presentation might end up taking up a fairly untenable amount of time. I think actually, now that I think about it, we did actually have one meeting where we did go through most of the grant awardees last year, although I might be misremembering from previous years. Commissioner Conklin, did you have?
Yeah, it was last summer, like a whole year ago now. I think that Molly and I worked on the proposal for having an event, right? Instead of the presentations, starting with this upcoming round. So spring 2025, we'll have a separate event for the awardees. They won't be doing presentations anymore in the future.
Okay.
Yeah. This will be our last presentation round.
Cool.
And that was approved.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you for reminding me about that.
So these people we're working with won't be doing a presentation. That's what you're telling
They
us.
will, yeah, you're right.
But not until 2025.
Oh, and it'll be an event.
But we're gonna hear from in the next few months.
The people that got it from last year.
Yes, so my question is, because I'm getting questions in, when do we want to spread out the presentations or do we want to just choose one meeting, maybe February to do that, all of them at once?
How many are there? I think there's 7. And we limited the time that they have.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on the
There were
7.
like 12.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Oh.
Unless we added any more, like.
No.
So,
One actually returned their funding. So there's
That
9.
was the year before, I think.
Really? They returned their funding?
Friends of Flagstaff's Future?
Yeah, they're not on here.
So they may have been removed then. Because they returned their funding.
so if we,
before?
They just returned it.
so if we have 10, then we could give them 10 minutes each, and that would be roughly half a commission meeting.
Yeah.
Might be easy to do it that way.
I think we can do it. I personally, the story, I love it. It's just so wonderful to.
It is pretty.
Yeah.
It is pretty fun to see what everyone has done.
Especially when you've read all the protect the potential and the what ifs and the whodunits and such.
All right. So unless there's anything else really urgent on this agenda item, I would like to move to Sustainability Division and staff updates. So Tia, I think that goes to you again.
Figured since we had so many staff members joining us today, I could probably fill in this role today. All right.
This is Vista?
That's a type of AmeriCorps. Does it stand for
Oh.
something?
Yeah, but Volunteers in Service to America, but I didn't know
Oh,
that's
okay.
what that Vista meant, so that's okay. Now I know.
Say, I don't know. All right, so I'm just gonna do some brief highlights since we're kind of trying to shift from reading this whole thing for you all. And then I will talk about some of the other stuff that I work on outside of working with you all.
Oh my gosh, you do something else
I
besides working with
know,
us?
right. So highlights include conducting targeted outreach to over 500 residents in flood-prone areas. Thank you to those commissioners who were able to come out and volunteer. This has one less application than it should. So the Neighborhood Sustainability Grants, of course, received 31 applications. That's a record. Climate team engaged with 498 people in September through various advisory groups, presenting. The largest probably amount is presenting at the Flagstaff Festival of Science, State of the Climate panel, and a community action fair that followed. We are currently completing an energy retrofit process across city facilities. Danae, that was here, is helping lead that process with the help of awesome contractors. The sustainability office gets ours done next week. We have the home weatherization and energy rebate program. It's in full gear. Spread the word. We have rebates now available for wood stove upgrades. That's a new thing. Electrical panel upgrades, energy efficient water heaters, insulation. We just launched a e-bike and scooter fleet for city employees. We launched the accessory dwelling unit survey that has now closed. I sent you all it, so I hope you had the opportunity to take it. As part of that, Genevieve and her partners are also interviewing contractors and builders in a separate kind of survey and interview to see how, what barriers they face and to get their input. We just heard about the LASS and code analysis project. Community stewards in September, over 1,200 service hours with 9 cleanups. With 98 volunteers. The Engage, Elevate, Empower program, I feel like I always mix those E's up. That's the city, yeah, I do, I definitely do.
You're not the only one, it's okay.
So yeah, we're getting these monthly reports in. This is a grant to the community action teams of Flagstaff, which is a previous recipient of the NSG grant as well. To pay a living wage, so Flagstaff minimum wage, to pick up litter around our community in key areas. And the reports that we get in are just extremely heartfelt. They receive a lot of positive community feedback from members. And they also, in this program, are providing job services. And so each month we also hear about those that have kind of graduated from this more temporary work through the job services they're able to access when they go to get paid to pick up litter. And we get really incredible letters every month from participants, and yeah, it's awesome. Sustainability office is helping implement a new citywide volunteerism policy. This is an internal policy to try to get more volunteering from employees, and they can earn some paid time off if they volunteer at a event that's approved by the city. NSG, you know all of this. Food systems work. They engaged with 52 people in the month of September.
Nice photos.
One thing I want to highlight is we just are sending out a USDA food systems
Survey.
survey. Yeah, and so I need to send that to you all. Yeah, so please take that. We're trying to get a ton of responses about food access in Flagstaff.
Please share it far and wide.
I was gonna say, do you want us to send these out to
Oh,
other
yeah.
people? Okay.
Yes, please, and yeah, I'll email that to you. Yeah, and one of our community partners, NACA, did a really cool winterization community garden workshop. We have some stats about our free residential food scrap drop-off, as well as a new food scrap drop-off location at the Family Food Center on 2nd Street, which actually is kind of in conjunction with one of the grants that some of you may all be reviewing. Yep. We continue to do the Flagstaff Recycles campaign, which has actually led to like a reduction in our contamination rates, which is awesome.
Do we ever network with the schools on the recycling? Do we ever have like Willow Bend? Like
So
elementary
we
schools?
actually partner Willow Bend Environmental Education Center, and they have recycling curriculum and climate action curriculum that they take to the schools.
Okay.
Yeah.
So kids do get to understand.
The reach is so much further
Yes.
working
Oh, yeah, that
with
would make
them
sense.
than,
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
and they're experts in
I was gonna suggest that
education,
you
not
already
us.
doing it.
All right, and then I'll wrap up here is our drop-off day is this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And that's where you can drop off items that would typically have to be brought to either specific stores or the Hazardous Products Center. And this is at the county health office off King Street. And I can send you all an email about that as well tomorrow. And also accepting like aerosol cans, batteries.
And you need volunteers to come and help collect the stuff.
We do
Yes.
probably need more volunteers, yeah. If you're willing to
County help.
volunteer.
I used to do it in Tucson.
Oh, yeah.
Heck yeah.
Come on down, Mary. Yeah. And it's 6:30, so.
I have nothing to add. I'm really excited to announce that Bree has agreed to join us as an AmeriCorps ELC, education learning, what's the C?
Oh, geez. Sorry, I'm like exhausted.
Core,
Thank you.
core,
Thank
C-O-R-P-S.
Thank you.
It's just
That makes
core.
sense.
There's
Yeah.
so many acronyms anymore.
Yeah.
See, I didn't hear what
I
you
think
said.
it's actually environmental literacy core.
Education literacy core.
Literacy,
Yes,
not even
yes.
learning. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, for our waste prevention efforts. So we're really excited. She officially starts next week.
Yep, on Monday, and I'll be there for the drop-off day.
That's
Saturday.
Waste prevention, is that our composting program? No.
That's a branch of it, yes.
You got it.
And that's gonna be officially part of the climate cores, right?
That I do not know
Okay.
for certain.
You're-
I'll get more information when I start officially.
Sounds
Yeah.
good.
Is that
But
under
yeah.
Russ?
Huh?
Yeah.
Is that under Russ? Russ is one of my favorite people.
He's amazing. Yeah. We, I think if we get all of our applications approved, we will have 7 positions. Some in public health, we're reaching
Okay.
out to Ally.
So the drop-off is at the health department.
Yes, we moved it this year. And it was very intentional, because for a variety of reasons, but there definitely is stigma,
Oh, yeah, the
for
police
some.
But where
Yes.
is the health department?
Oh,
Where is
it's
it?
over at King Street, so
Which
it's east of 4th Street,
Oh, okay.
north of 66.
Okay, I know where that is, okay.
Sorry, I thought you were saying why at King
No,
Street.
no, I,
We are hoping to increase attendance or participation by moving it from the police department. And we'll see. This was the first year that we've moved it, so. And we're also expanding our partners with Coconino County. So that's also double dipping.
All right, well, I know it doesn't look like we'll have time for vice chair elections, but like I said,
you're doing such a great job, why can't you just be a vice chair too?
functionally right now I am. But, okay, so we'll have to move, next, one more,
Can I make a suggestion that if somebody wants to volunteer, maybe they should, like, can they send the information to somebody and you could put that on the list so that you kind of have that, a step forward in this process? Does that make sense? I mean, I know we can't talk to everybody on the email, but can it go on the agenda, you know, like Susie Smith is volunteering to be the vice chair, anyone else, and no one else, then let's just give it to Susie Smith.
Well, ideally, if and when Susie Smith is here, then we
Well,
can
no, what
just
you
do
understand,
that.
I mean, in general, I don't know who this is volunteering, and I'm not volunteering.
Susie Smith was also interested in other people stepping up,
There you go.
so.
Okay.
One thing that I would like to ask though, and I'm bending the agenda a little bit, but I would like to make a motion that so we have basically one meeting left for the year if we do this as we normally do. I would like to make a motion that it be we be allowed to schedule more than 2 hours.
And we need to move it.
Is it on Valentine's?
We
So
Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving, is our next meeting.
So, do we usually do it the week?
We usually combine Thanksgiving, combine the November and December meeting into one giant meeting. But let's look at the calendar.
Yeah.
And do we typically do that in the first week of December or?
Well,
Do we bring
before.
cookies and do we
So
bring
what-
punch?
I think what we've done in the past that's worked the best is just sending out a doodle poll. Or
Oh, yeah.
a meeting poll, especially because we don't have all commissioners with us.
I don't understand what a meeting poll is.
So
It's-
it's a scheduling tool that allows people to choose times that work
Oh,
best for.
Poll in the sense of P-O-L-L. I didn't
Yes.
know. I thought it was a P-O-L-E.
No, it's a POLL.
Poll, what's that?
Yeah.
Sounds good. I will send that.
I understand polling for
ASAP.
meetings.
So I would like to take a vote if it's okay. I would like to I would like to move that we are authorized to send out a poll to reschedule next month's meeting to a month to a day other than Thanksgiving, to combine the November and December meetings as has been our tradition, and to be authorized to exceed the meeting length, or to exceed the regular 2-hour meeting length if necessary. Can I have a second for that?
I second.
Okay, we have a second from Commissioner Metzger, thank you very much. Is there any discussion on the current motion?
Question, can we make it start earlier versus go later?
Yeah. Thank you for letting us know that that's your preference, and probably.
Or we can poll it, but
Yeah.
if that could be in the poll.
And we'll bring
Yeah.
snacks.
Okay.
Oh, we've never brought snacks.
Is
No.
somebody gonna go,
We can
is someone gonna go feed my
snacks
dogs?
After they feed mine.
Okay.
Can we bring our dogs?
Oh, there you go.
Yes.
No, you don't want my dogs at a meeting.
I do.
I want all the dogs. I have, mine
I
are
mean,
Chihuahua.
They were in the
mixed.
office
They're
all
not
day.
friendly.
I mean, theoretically, we could do
Molly
the,
has a question.
Molly, go ahead, thanks. Commissioner McCormick, go ahead.
Yeah, I realize I might be in the minority here, but is there any way we cannot make the meeting over 2 hours? Just thinking about maybe there's some updates from folks that we could put off to another month or something. Just
Yeah, I think there's
2 hours is already kind of hard. It's long.
A lot.
Yeah,
love you.
I sympathize with that.
Well, if you did, you'd be here.
I sympathize with that. Certainly there's a lot that I think that we will be skipping. But at a minimum, we will need to elect a new vice chair because I may not be here in January. And also at a minimum, we'll need to go over we will need to award our neighborhood sustainability
Let's put it in
grant
the
money,
poll. It's in the poll.
which hopefully that'll take a lot less than 2 hours, but you were here last year and you remember how that went. So Commissioner Conkle, go ahead.
I have a suggestion for this, talking about the scoring, which I think is what most of the meeting will be next month. We'll all put our scores in, and we have 30-some projects, and it might be nice to be like, we're only talking about the scoring for projects that have the
Yeah.
largest discrepancies.
Yeah, and I believe that's already in the plan.
And- Okay.
And yeah, so
So that
that
way we
is,
maybe only have to talk about like 10 projects.
yeah, so
right?
that is already in the
Okay.
plan. But you were here last year too, so.
Okay, that gets rowdy.
But I
So I
think
just-
some of the things that created the lengthy
Yeah.
meeting last year was,
Hopefully we'll,
I think we've worked through some of
Yeah.
the calculation piece of that.
So,
yeah, and I do too, I do too. I think it will go, I think it won't go that long, but again, things happen and I want to be prepared. Anyway, speaking of going long, we've gone too long. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Any other business?
I'm sorry.
There's no
Well,
vote then?
What is that?
There's no vote then?
Oh, right.
I thought we were gonna make it a poll, it's in the poll, but
Did the
Oh,
vote
no, we
already
have to vote, the vote is to make it a poll. So the motion, well, okay, never mind, I rescind the motion.
Okay.
I don't think we've required a motion on that in previous years anyway. Let's just, is that okay? Do you think that's okay, Nicole?
I think,
Okay,
maybe we need a motion to table the, vice chair.
okay. I move, can I motion to table vice chair election still next, again then?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, please say no. Okay, the motion passes. Okay, thank you all. I will see you.
I'm sorry, I have somebody waiting in the cold, I gotta go pick them up.
I understand. Thank you all. I will see you all soon.
Bye-bye, see you next time. Thank you for all your help in explaining all this to me, I'm sorry.
Of course.
Okay. Yeah, sorry for going 10 minutes late again. It's a challenge sometimes to stay on time.
It was an ambitious agenda. There was a
Yeah.
lot this
There was a lot, yeah, we'll work on that.
Nicole, I know it's been a rather long day for you as well.
Yeah.
Do you have like 5 minutes?
3? I'm
Okay.
gonna be somewhere at 7, so yes.
Oh, okay. I just, we can set up some other time in the next couple weeks.
Of course.
I want to discuss, and just wanted to, we've mentioned this before, but I want to really make sure we do this sometime in the next month or so. I just want to discuss like, how best to handle the transition to having a new chair and to be no longer.
Yeah, I'll look at it.
Send me a little reminder email.
Wait, they have to?
I don't want to either, but I would rather just,
Thank you.
thanks, Commissioner.
No,
Thanks,
yeah,
Krista.
and I think for the 3 of us.
Yeah, I would rather just stay on the commission, and, you know, as long as,
That person
as,
was,
you know,
that
if
made a comment
my-
on Alex.
you know, I was toying with the idea of just like, as long as,
Rach's last name,
as long
but
as they're not
maybe in the
appointing
minutes it
anybody,
could be
new, and
like-
just staying on his chair as long as,
I thought about
that continues to happen, but
I thought about
I'm
asking,
told
and
that
then
they have enough
we stopped.
applicants
So,
and
like,
also
okay.
the intent to appoint.
So in the minutes, I'll just
people.
probably put like,
So, that's probably A, not in the cards, and B, not in the best interest of the commission. So, if you think, if you disagree, I won't argue hard, because I like being chair, but
I could maybe just put in the minutes like.
there's a few other
yes,
things, like I may ask
Community
to,
member added.
if I can just kind
so-and-so.
of
Okay,
stay on in a,
cool.
like, sort of semi-official
All
capacity,
right,
just to
then, if all the
help
transcripts
organize a
and
few,
stuff are
just a few
good
more
to
things
go,
that I just.
I'm gonna try to get a
want
community
closure on.
minutes
I would
at
love
least by tomorrow.
that. Yeah.
Sweet.
Like
Alright.
I,
You need
like
those
I've
presentations.
been really busy at work, I've been procrastinating, I
Oh.
still wanna,
Jenny.
I still
I've just
wanna,
been
like,
screenshotting them from the
try to do some
videos.
coordination between
That's what
the
I've been
city
doing.
and the
So,
county.
Yeah,
With,
yeah, I mean, it's
with
been
reforestation.
working, right? Like,
we have, you know, these foods,
Yeah.
we have like.
Yeah,
these,
no worries,
you know,
if I
we
have
were
the
just talking-
recording,
We were even just
screenshot,
talking
I
about,
just
you
drop
know,
it in
food scrap
and-
drop-offs, and I'm thinking,
Yeah,
it'd
when
be
I was
great
like
if we
doing
could,
it.
you know, send some of those to the Forest Service to use as mulch.
My fancy PDF.
Well, so we
Oh.
pay a composting
oh,
small
yeah, the
businesses
snipping
to get.
tool, yeah,
So
it's
what they do
super
with
easy,
the
you just
product
snip it,
is
copy,
actually their.
put it in, you don't have to do
Yeah,
anything.
well, I was gonna call
It's
it
a great
too,
idea.
but.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But yeah, but the main thing I just, you know, you and Tia and I know it's not something I wanna talk about either, but
No, but
We-
we need to
we-
talk about it.
yeah.
We do need to talk about
And I
it for sure.
I let, Chair White know this, that, Stacy Salzberg confirmed we have enough applications in to make the appointment,
Okay,
so, but she knows we wanna wait until at least the grant
Which
season ends.
I do appreciate, I was honestly.
she's wonderful
Yeah.
and so helpful, and then we will, next up, once we get through the grants, is going to be changing the ordinance.
I was thinking, we should make a subcommittee to work on that.
I love that. And as part of changing the ordinance to update it, so it's reflective of the work we do, but it's also the appointment dates.
Yeah, and any help you all want
And
with all
I,
that? let me
actually, I
know,
don't
but-
know,
Okay.
we need to double check with the clerk's office if